On the 27th of January, Donald Trump issued an executive order. It began his attempt to fulfill a key campaign promise: a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the U.S. On the wintry Friday night, as the nation's airports descended into chaos, many people stood against the president's first travel ban. Among them was a small group of young lawyers, working at a series of non-profits, who one jokingly called Dumbledore's Army. They stand against Trump still. Their Dumbledore, named for the headmaster of Hogwarts in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter novels, is Mike Wishney, a soft-spoken Yale Law School professor who leads an immigration-focused clinic staffed by students. On the night of the first ban, Wishney was at a Boston Celtics game. The executive order was shocking, an attempt to ban entry to all refugees and people from 7 Muslim-majority countries. The professor's phone began to buzz. The callers were 2 former students, Justin Cox and Becca Heller. Cox works for the National Immigration Law Center, out of its office in Atlanta. Heller runs the International Refugee Assistance Project IRAP, a New York-based organization she founded while at school. IRAP had several clients who were on flights when Trump issued the ban. One, Hamid Darwish, an Iraqi national who had worked with the U.S. Army, was then held by immigration authorities in New York. The first international flights out of JFK were leaving first thing the next morning, Heller said. I wanted to make sure our client wasn't sent back. Justin suggested we go for habeas corpus, seek an order releasing our client. Mike thought we should make it a class action, covering all the people detained in airports across the U.S. and denied entry, nationwide. Mike Wishney in action, at a legal aid justice center training session. Photograph Simon Sandoval Moschenberg as outrage spread across America, an ambitious plan started to form. Going home from the basketball game in a taxi, Wishney mobilized around 20 current students to start researching and drafting papers that would, in collaboration with the American Civil Liberties Union, be filed with a duty judge in Brooklyn. Heller pulled an all-nighter, then arrived at JFK on Saturday. I hadn't seen the videos of thousands of people who showed up at airports across the country and were yelling, "Let them in," she said. It was mayhem. Other former Wishney students worked at airports in Washington, Chicago and San Francisco. It was the first outing of Dumbledore's Army. Late that evening, based on the materials and oral submissions by an ACLU lawyer, a Brooklyn judge struck the ban down. It was a moment of triumph. The young lawyers had helped free Darwish and many others. Filing it as a class action, that was so Mike, said Swapna Reddy, another former Wishney student who now helps run the Asylum Seeker Advocacy Project, a non-profit that advises women and children. Even in that tight time frame, they went the extra distance to go at the executive order's application to people all over. What we're seeing is a battle for the soul of the country, an attempt to redefine what it means to be an American. Becca Heller, IRAP. The campaign goes on. All less than a decade into practice, the young lawyers have chosen to use their degrees to work at small-budget non-profits. Instrumental in a succession of interim victories against Trump immigration policies, so many Davids fighting the Goliath that is the U.S. Department of Justice, they have been stretched well beyond what they thought were the limits. I've pulled more all-nighters than in the rest of my life combined, Cox said. Cox and Wishney are now among lawyers challenging Trump's decision to end the so-called Dreamer program, Barack Obama's attempt to provide legal cover to approximately 800,000 undocumented migrants brought to the U.S. as children. The case is expected to come before another Brooklyn judge in January. This month, IRAP and Muslim Advocates, employer of another Wishney alum, Cyrene Sebaya, convinced a Maryland court to strike down Trump's latest travel ban against nationals of a slightly altered list of Muslim-majority countries as well as North Koreans and some Venezuelan government officials and their families. Cox was one of the lawyers who argued the case. It is expected to be appealed to the Supreme Court. Heller has a theory about why the president has made such a push on immigration. Trump has repeatedly failed to get his agenda through Congress, she said. Every time he fails on this front, he tries to make it up to his base by going after more immigrants and refugees. What we're seeing is a battle for the soul of the country, an attempt to redefine what it means to be an American. Mike Wishney's protégés are fighting in that battle. Here are profiles of 5 of them. Becca Heller. Becca Heller speaks to the media outside the U.S. District Court in Greenbelt, Maryland, in March. Photograph Paul J. Richard Sapp. Getty Images. Heller grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, then went east, to Dartmouth for undergrad and to Yale to study law. Between the summer of her first and second years at law school, she worked for a non-governmental organization in Jordan, meeting many Iraqis displaced by the war. In many cases, these were people who had risked their lives to help the U.S. forces, she said. We decided to set up an organization at Yale, the Iraqi Refugee Assistance Project. Now headquartered in New York, the non-profit has changed its name to the International Refugee Assistance Project (IRAP), reflecting its broadened mandate. Heller also worked at Wishny's clinic on the Danbury 11, a case in which a group of workers were picked up from a day labor site in a nearby Connecticut town by policemen masquerading as contractors. The officers detained the workers, with a view to deporting them. I repeatedly had to brief and argue emotions, saying none of the plaintiffs should have to turn over anything that would implicate their immigration status in the discovery process, she said. Frankly, I found arguing a harrowing experience. I said to Mike, I'm really afraid of oral argument. His response was simply, I don't believe you. Something in the exchange gave her confidence. There was this sense that he thought his students were capable of impossible things, she said, so they delivered that. Her organization has been on the front lines against the administration's executive orders. There's been ongoing fights for immigrants' rights in America, she said. The Obama administration was no friend to undocumented immigrants. But the vitriol is new, is different, with a dialectic coming from the man at the head of the administration calling some immigrants rapists, murderers, terrorists. The fight over immigrant and refugee rights feels personal, feels existential to me. Simon Sandoval-Moshenberg. Simon Sandoval-Moshenberg in action. Photograph. Simon Sandoval-Moshenberg, the child of immigration activists. Sandoval-Moshenberg lived in a town in Virginia where there was a big Salvadoran community. People who had fled the Civil War. After undergrad at Columbia, he went to Yale with the idea of qualifying to help people navigate the Byzantine U.S. immigration and refugee apparatus. At law school, he heard about the Danbury 11. Then new to Yale, Wishny had decided the clinic he was hired to start would take the case on. Not only did the students free most of the arrested laborers, but they got a settlement of $650,000 from the city. Someone needed to bang out the suits for the lawyers at the airport. Simon Sandoval-Moshenberg. Post-law school, Sandoval-Moshenberg landed a job with the Immigration Advocacy Program, part of the Legal Aid Justice Program, working out of his native Virginia. On the evening the first Muslim ban came down, he was sick and stayed home. Which, as it turns out, he said, was lucky. Someone needed to bang out the suits for the lawyers at the airport. He worked with another member of the Yale network, Cyrene Shabaya, to issue proceedings to help two Yemeni brothers caught by the ban reunite with their father. His organization is now planning to challenge the way the Trump administration ordered the cancellation of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals (DACA). They said they were stopping renewals for Dreamers on the 5th of October, but before that people had renewal dates in this coming December, January, he said. Like with a driver's license, you don't start to think about renewing until close to the time. Justin Cox, right, listens to Omar Jadwit of the ACLU, outside court in Maryland in March. Photograph. Manuel Balchasen Etap. As counsel for the National Immigration Law Center, Cox has litigated against both of the Trump administration's main thrusts in immigration, the DACA order and the travel bans. We think the president has exceeded the statutory authority given to him, he said. There's a statute passed by Congress, the Immigration and Naturalization Act, that he can't just rewrite. Unlike his friend Sandoval-Moshenberg, Cox did not come to law school intending to specialize in immigration. I grew up in a town in Missouri where everyone was white, everyone was Christian, he said. My mom worked 2-3 jobs to help raise me. In college in St. Louis, waiting tables, I met the busboys, all Mexican, got to know them, learned Spanish, spent a year in Latin America. One small thing leads to the next. In America we do this good immigrant bad immigrant thing. Mexicans are both lazy, a drain, and they take all our jobs. Justin Cox at Yale, he was outraged when he learned about the sting in Danbury. These guys just wanted to work to put food on their family tables, he said. The guys at the restaurant would just have finished their day jobs when they came in for their shift. In America, we do this good immigrant bad immigrant thing, going both ways. Mexicans are both lazy, a drain, and they take all our jobs. That said, he says he was heartened by the number of Americans who converged on the airports on the night of the first ban. I've been doing immigrants' rights work since law school, he said. It's not often that you have hundreds, thousands of people, particularly white people, chanting "let them in" on behalf of our clients. Sirene Shabaya offers advice to airport travelers. Photograph Sirene Shabaya helped draft the complaint heard by the Maryland District Court in October, on the basis of which it issued a preliminary injunction against the third travel ban. "We call it the Muslim Ban 3.0, she said, flatly. A senior counsel at the Washington, D.C.-based non-profit Muslim Advocates, Shabaya worked to ensure the documents put before the court spoke of the hardships the ban visited on Iranian Americans. Their names have been kept out of it, she said. They are afraid there will be retaliation. Among the clients mentioned in the materials are an elderly American resident couple in poor health hoping their son can come from Iran to help in their cure, and an American-born woman whose fiancé is Iranian. Unless she gives up her homeland, the pair will effectively be kept apart by the ban." Shabaya grew up in Beirut during the long civil war in the Lebanon, then came to the U.S. to do graduate work in philosophy at Columbia, then law at Yale. "I didn't really think that Trump would follow through on his anti-Muslim campaign rhetoric," she said. "But when I saw the first ban, I couldn't believe it. Even though I had 2 young kids, one just 4 months old, we had to go to the airport as a family, to Dallas. While his sons were detained, a father asked me if I thought his boys had anything to eat, to drink. That hit me." Howard Sirene Shabaya there, with remote backup from another Sandoval Moschenberg, she helped put together the suit that got the 2 Yemeni brothers into the country. "Their father was waiting for them in Michigan," she said, "and they were coerced into signing something that said they gave up their rights to come into the country, and deported." On the phone, while his sons were detained, the father asked me if I thought his boys had anything to eat, to drink. That question, a father wondering about his son's well-being, hit me hard. Swapna Reddy, fourth from right, with Mike Wishney, left, and other clinic students after a recent court hearing. Photograph Swapna Reddy, the daughter of Indian immigrants. Reddy grew up in Tennessee and did her undergrad in computer science at Harvard. "After I graduated I did some quantitative work," she said, mostly with non-profits. One project involved how smarter artificial intelligence could help a foreign aid program see how well it was working. "But I wanted to be closer to people's decision-making about problems. We started representing women in the refugee claims. Before we came, none of them were winning." Swapna Reddy, so she went to law school. At Yale she worked in Wishney's immigration law clinic and through a grant found by him, got the opportunity to visit the largest U.S. detention center, in Dilley, Texas, near the Mexican border. About 2,400 women and children, mainly from Central America, are interned there while their claims for sanctuary are considered. "We started representing women in the refugee claims," Reddy said. "Before we came, none of them were winning. Almost everyone we represented won their cases. To continue working with women and children claiming refugee status, she and 3 others co-founded the Asylum Seeker Advocacy Project in 2015. Based in Chicago, she has used her computing savvy, setting up a chat room for women who have left the Dilley Detention Center and others. They built supportive friendships in there and through the online community often can help each other out," she said. She has also helped set up a listserv for volunteers who since January have been visiting O'Hare Airport to provide legal and other aid to inbound travelers. One of her clients, a Honduran woman, identified only as FH, and her son hit the news in May, when Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey used Twitter to try to convince the Trump administration to prevent her deportation, ultimately without success. She claimed she'd seen her cousin killed and had death threats made against her, Reddy said. "The issue we're facing is that the bar as to what is a credible fear of persecution has been raised.